Mexican ones. It was like
One. Welcome back to Tack Ops. I'm Greg, and you are,
And I'm Eric. Howdy, howdy.
and we and we have Steffan Watkins back for a second time because it's been in the news a lot. But Open Skies, we had him on the first time, and we talked a lot about it. But I've already forgot a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. We were talking about it earlier because it's not a very known thing. It seems like a lot of times before now, the only time you ever heard of Open Skies was, Fox News or whoever put out an article saying a Russian spy plane is flying directly overhead. And then you read the article and it's like, it's a long treaty that's been in effect for 15 years or whatever. It's a normal thing. It's all planned.
Right.
But the headline, always tries to get people trapped in. So anyway, I think a lot of people don't know about it. So the thing Steffan Watkins is really good at is cutting through a lot of the misinformation out there. And there's misinformation on both sides. And he's really good at really getting there and describing it. So Thanks for coming back on.
always happy to help. I'm always happy to help out.
Awesome. Do you want to start out maybe talking about yourself, how you got interested in this stuff, maybe a little bit of your background?
Sure. I'll try and keep it short because I can go on. But back, I don't know, 2010, a little before 2010, I was down in Albuquerque and found myself looking at mountains and buildings to do with the Manhattan Project, saying, "Wow, this is cool stuff. I'd love to see more of this stuff. Travel around the states, maybe take some pictures of old bases, old concrete crumbling bunkers," and thought that's a good way for me to end up in jail as a spy. So why don't I stay home and figure out what in Canada has some Cold War flavor to it? And I'd heard about some Beaumark missiles or something, and some nukes and some voodoos and whatever. And so I went off researching, where is this stuff? And I started to go to these old bases that had crumbled to nothing in the middle of nowhere. Locals would tell me, "Oh, there's nothing there on the top of the mountain anymore." And I would say, "Well, no, there's got to be stuff there. I can see it from like the Google satellite view." And they're like, "Well, there's some foundations." And I'm like, "That's awesome." So I go up there and I see these old bases and take pictures. And as I learned more about the sort of Cold War history of Canada, I found out more about where the nukes were stored, what nukes were stored here, what nukes have been stored but have never been admitted to be stored here. And I came across this Open Skies Treaty thing that was only started in, I mean, they started flying in 2002. It's kind of post Cold War, but they were still flying. I was wondering, where were the Russians flying? If the Russians are flying over Canada, taking pictures of military facilities, that gives me a short list of Canadian military facilities that are interesting enough that the Russians want to fly all the way over here and take pictures of them. So does the Canadian government have a secret base in the middle of Saskatchewan where they feed aliens in an underground cave? No, not that I
No.
can tell. Not that I don't think I could
Damn
find the
it.
lizard people, but
Damn it.
the Russians are going to go and look at all of the old Cold War bases that I was going to go and see and take pictures of. So
And
they're
maybe some you
interested
might
and
not
I'm
know about too,
interested.
right?
This is exactly what I was looking for, was, are they visiting places that I don't know about? So they're visiting because it's easy to get to these places as far as rail access, old old airstrips in the middle of nowhere, um, highways, like all that infrastructure from the Cold War has just become part of the urban sort of environment. But all the roads and stuff are still there. They haven't been used since the 70s. But if you were going to rebuild a new military base, you would still need access to roads, rail, air, and you'd probably pick one of these old places to put your new military facilities. And that has happened before, where when the Canadian government needed a new place to put something like a satellite downlink, they've repurposed old property to do that again. So they did that for Polar Epsilon out in out east and out west. There were two different satellite ground terminals, and they were both set up at old Cold War bases that were part of the Diefenbunker kind of what do you call it? Regional communication system, the after the Doomsday radio sort of system. Anyway, these facilities that they were overflying, I thought that's pretty cool. But then I saw, I got to know more about it, and I saw this interesting testimony in 2016 from a three-star American general, the head of the DIA, Lieutenant General Stewart, who is now being considered for the head of the CIA, if I last heard correctly. And he everything he said about the Open Skies Treaty was the opposite of what I had heard and what I'd understood from my research about the Open Skies Treaty. So I thought that was weird. So I thought, well, who can I ask? Well, I can ask the Canadian Forces. So as a citizen journalist, I contacted the Canadian Forces and said, "Hey, can I talk to somebody who knows something about the Open Skies Treaty, like maybe the head of the department that does our Open Skies Treaty flights?" And they said, "Sure." And I was kind of surprised. But I told them what I was interested in, and they said, "Sure, no problem." So I went down, met with the lieutenant colonel, and asked him all the questions that I had from the lieutenant general's testimony. And it wouldn't be cool for him to call out a general and say that he wasn't telling the truth, but I would say every answer he gave a distinct impression that we were being misled. It wasn't just Lieutenant General Stewart. There was also Admiral Haney, who was giving testimony at the same time that was equally misleading. But they were both being quizzed by Tom Cotton and other Republicans, part of the Senate Armed Services, if I remember correctly. And these guys are famously against the Open Skies Treaty. So it was almost like a theater sort of presentation going on. I was told that the Lieutenant General was briefed by people who were friendly with Cotton. I don't know if he was directly briefed by them or his briefers were briefed by them rather, but something crooked happened there. I can't prove it. I can't drag him back in front of the Senate, but what he said there was at least misleading. I don't want to say it was untrue because I found that military people are very good at not lying to you, but misleading you, and then not correcting you when you get it wrong.
Lying without lying.
Lying without outlying, exactly.
Yeah.
So whether he lied or not is sort of beside the point. But at the end of the day of that testimony and all the media buzz about it in 2016, the public was very misled about the Open Skies Treaty, and that kind of went away for a little while. And then in October of 2019, October 2019, Slate, Vox, a bunch of other news organizations all reported that Bolton, by that time, had already left. Bolton was anti-treaty everything. Tim Morrison was still there as an advisor in the NSC. And he had basically continued on Bolton's legacy to exterminate the Open Skies Treaty and had slipped some paperwork underneath Trump's nose to get him to sign sort of like I don't know if it's sort of like a promissory note or something that he would be withdrawing from the Open Skies Treaty. It wasn't the start of the withdrawal. That only happened in March, April, something about 6 months ago or so. And officially, the Open Skies Treaty was withdrawn from end of November 22nd, I think it was.
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago.
Exactly. So all of that was, in my view, based on false premises or false pretenses, rather. And it's hard to fight the White House or the New York Times or Washington Post or other large organizations as just some random guy in Canada. But I think I have a pretty good posse in my corner. Nobody's supporting me publicly. Nobody's supporting me privately. But at least the people who are agreeing with me or that I'm agreeing with are all pretty heavy hitters. And you'll notice that none of them are Republicans that sit in the Senate. Like Alexandra Bell, Rose Gottemoyer, Anthony Weir, who else? Jeffrey Lewis. You hear any of these people speak about the Open Skies Treaty, and they're all very rational, pro Open Skies people. Their views don't jive with the Republicans in the Senate who have been trying to kill the treaty since like 2013 or 2014. And I just think it's a lot easier for people to wrap their heads around Obamacare. Republicans say Obamacare is bad. Democrats say it's good. And everybody kind of knows what Obamacare was about, the ACA or whatever. But when you start talking about the Open Skies Treaty, people's eyes glaze over. They don't know who the players are. They don't know what the issues are. And we're being led by people who are trying to exterminate the treaty. Or I should say, the Senate is being led by people who are trying to kill the treaty. So the talking points that they bring up aren't well-meaning, shall we say. They're trying to portray the issues in the worst possible way. They don't mention the good, they only mention the bad. And then the people who are for the treaty are on their heels trying to defend positions that are their least advantageous. And the things that are most important from the treaty don't get discussed because, the Democrats don't really have the mic.
That too, right?
Right. So, okay. So when you talk about the Republicans saying that they want to crush it, what's the motive behind that? Like, why get away from it?
I think it's the same as the rest of the arms control treaties, that the Bolton doctrine being that America shouldn't be constrained by any treaties. It just ties their hands, and that can't be good. If the Russians or whoever else don't fully adhere to the treaty, it's not worth having. We should just burn it, which is an oversimplification and isn't really how diplomacy works. But they're not really into diplomacy. They're into getting rid of all the treaties so they can build as many arms that they want, or I should say their financiers can build as many arms as they want. Because Tom Cotton is very blatantly financed by the military industrial complex, I should say. Like if you go to one of his speeches, you'll find that the coffee or the donuts or whatever have a little sign beside it saying sponsored by, and it'll have a name of a missile company, whether it's McDonnell Douglas or whoever. I don't remember who it was, but like they literally sponsor his events.
I don't think McDonald's Douglas has existed for like 30 years.
Yeah, I think you're dating yourself there, man.
Yeah.
No, they were bought out by
Raytheon or
yeah, they were bought out by Boeing,
exactly,
I
exactly. Any of those.
believe. Sorry to call you out.
No, that's good.
See, we got to sort through the misinformation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No.
Whoever it is, exactly.
Yeah, no.
Because it doesn't matter. They're all the same.
Right, yeah. I mean,
True.
somebody's got to pay for that coffee, right? I mean, he's not going to pay for that shit.
Well, exactly. He's not going to pay for it. Exactly. He needs a new boat.
Yeah. So we talk about open skies, and one of the things about open skies that you have to get comfortable with is tracking aircraft. And I've noticed that you've been tracking a lot more aircraft lately. I was hoping that you could tell us, using your experience with tracking ships, how much that's helped you with tracking aircraft and what the difference is, and what's the purpose of tracking aircraft compared to all of the great things that you've done with tracking ships.
I think it's all. I mean, to me, my background is as an IT security professional. I don't have a background in the Navy. I don't have a background in the Air Force. I see this as a bunch of numbers and a bunch of logs. I've spent decades going through logs, looking for problems for customers or on my own systems or the systems that I've managed. And it's always in the logs. Whatever the problem is, it's always in the logs. Or if it's not in the logs, you have to make improvements to get them in the logs. But anyway, point is, whether it's coordinates from a plane or coordinates from a ship, it's just a bunch of coordinates. And if you can manage to shoehorn that into some GIS program or into Google Maps or Google Earth or something, you get a very good idea of where a ship's been if you've got enough data or enough plane data, right? So to me, it's lately anyway, I've been paying more attention to groups of things, whether it's a type of plane or a country or a unit or something, and sort of piecing together and trying to make into threads where entire groups of planes are. Because if a single B-52, say, flies to the Middle East and flies back again, great, I know one plane. And if I every day diligently check where's that plane, I've got one data point, but there's a whole bunch of other B-52s that I may not know about. It's much easier to look at them all on the map at the same time using ADS-B exchange, and then see where they all are today. And then you'll see when one goes to the depot or something to get maintenance done, it disappears off the map for a while, and you sort of keep track of things that way. But looking at things in systems or in groups rather than individual planes and trying to string together what the story is with them.
Has that helped you with? So I would assume Open Skies is tied in with aviation tracking, so you can obviously track where they go.
Absolutely.
Is that where you kind of got your start from it? And
you got it. So
right.
Tracking Open Skies planes. So that's another thing. So the Canadian government, I asked them a whole bunch more questions, and I asked them a bunch of stuff through our Freedom of Information Act, Access to Information Act up here. And they gave me a ton of information that I was kind of surprised that they did. But I've got post-mission reports of over a decade of flights. I've got coordinates of what things the Russians were taking pictures of, coordinates of what we were looking at over in Russia, and all this wonderful information. So I thought, well, the Americans must have similar information available. So I was asking journalists in the States, have you requested this stuff? And they have. But they also don't get it because they block the Freedom of Information Act requests on some exception to the Freedom of Information Act. And I was like, well, what exception could that be? Because you're supposed to be able to ask for anything. Well, the exception says the resulting data from flights is not available for Freedom of Information Act requests. And what that meant when they originally put the exception in the 90s was the pictures. They didn't want people to be able to ask for pictures of middle of nowhere Russia through Freedom of Information Act requests, or pictures of the states or any other of the countries. But what they're applying it to is also the flight plans and the mission reports and everything else, which is not the spirit of that exception. And I think it could be challenged in the court, but nobody's bothered yet. So right now, if you in the States ask the government to tell you where their planes flew over Russia or the Russian planes flew over the States, they probably won't tell you. You should try, but they probably won't tell you. But they should, because it's just a flight plan. The flight plan itself is not secret. It can't be, because it's given to the FAA. It's given all over the place. In Italy, when Russian planes fly over Italy, they issue a NOTAM with that whole route in it. And same thing in the UK. When the UK gets overflown by the Russian AN-30, it's like a little 2-engine propeller plane thing.
Right.
It flies low. People take pictures. People gawk and say, what is that thing? But ultimately, everybody knows. They can just look on I don't remember what the British equivalent of the FAA is, but they have the NOTAM posted there, and you can see where the plane would have flown.
Right.
You get none of that in the States. They keep it completely from the public, and it's in their policy document or in their procedures. So there's a U.S. Air Force policy saying that public affairs will not outward, or what do they call it? They won't engage the press. Basically, they won't send out press releases about it. They'll only answer questions about it, and even at that, it's kind of sort of begrudgingly.
Why do you think that is? Like, why keep it from the public, especially nowadays, when we could just look it up? Like, it's not anything new when we see them, because they generally come in and they fly into, like, I guess Washington D.C. or somewhere on the East Coast, and they land and they refuel. And then I guess they go through their inspection or whatever, and then they fly over and do their old tour. Yeah. So Greg's right now
You got it.
He's got he's got the map pulled up of where they fly over.
It is. You can't find much. This is all from AI or different tracking things.
And I think it was the Drive or the Warzone that had done I think Tyler had done a map of a bunch of the places that they flew over.
Oh, we did
and
pull that
published
up
it
last
a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And it shows that they fly over exactly what you expect them to go over. Missile sites, testing sites, military bases. One of the things that was being pushed in the media by the people trying to kill the treaty was, this is being used for reasons of targeting infrastructure.
Right.
Well, how would they do that? Think this through for a second.
Well,
you have Google Earth. I have Google Earth. Everybody's got Google Earth. I can tell you exactly where the smokestack is on a nuclear power plant in New York.
Right.
That's not secret.
And not only that, but I have a project been going slowly for a couple of years, but to map every single military site on Earth. So I have the U.S. pulled up here on Google Maps, and I have every military base in the U.S.
Well, we should get together then, because I would like to take that list and then put all the tracks for the Open Skies Treaty flights over it.
Yeah.
And then you would see which bases they hopped between and know that what the Tom Cottons of the world are trying to tell people about them overflying, fiber nodes in downtown Detroit or something, is just ridiculous.
I mean,
they're flying over the same stuff we do.
If I were Putin, I'd be like, you need to fly over Air 51. Right? I mean,
and they do.
You need to go. Yeah. I mean, Groom Lake. Yes, please. I want to go over there. I mean, if they're going to do anything crazy, UFOs aside, they're obviously doing a lot of testing out there. Please fly over there as much as possible. But it seems like they don't.
They do.
Oh,
they did, or rather, it's not. They do about 8, 10, 12 flights a year usually. I can't remember how many, but it's say a dozen. So they'll have different ends of the states that they do. They'll do sort of one corner one time. They'll do Alaska another time, Hawaii another time. So they do it kind of by zones. But once you see that they start doing their California, Nevada kind of tour, you can predict what the next spot is they're going to hit just by the direction generally that they're heading. And if you remember what they looked at last time, it's very predictable.
Huh. Yeah. So everybody at Groom Lake knows they're coming. So like, hey, tuck everything away real quick. We don't want them to see anything when they fly over. Pull everything back out. Pull the toys back out.
I know a guy who was either at Groom Lake or China. Was it China Lake?
Yeah,
I think he's at one of those, and he was working there, and he hadn't heard about what this Open Skies Treaty flight was going to be. That their command would have known. He just didn't know because he was lower down on the totem pole. But he saw what to him looked like a passenger plane fly right overhead. And he was like, well, that's kind of weird considering it's restricted airspace. But, he kept on doing what he was doing. It didn't faze him until a few days later when he saw one of my posts. I went, oh, that was what that thing was.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
So it's kind of neat to sort of tie it all together. Like, you saw it? That's awesome.
Wow, that's crazy.
I saw the plane when it was in Ottawa, I don't know, 6 years ago or something. They stopped by. And it was, I got a couple of pictures, but not very good pictures.
Yeah, they seem to be, they seem to really playing around in Canada too. Why Ottawa? Like, what's going on up
They
there?
usually stop in Trenton, but Trenton was having some runway work or something, so they stopped in Ottawa as sort of their second choice airstrip. But one of the
Okay.
things that comes up, they mention the people who are trying to get rid of the open skies and have successfully withdrawn from the Open Skies Treaty. They say that, well, you can replace it with satellite imagery. And this
Right.
is where things get confused, that people think that these maybe people think that these flights are supposed to reveal some new intelligence, like they're going to fly over Groom Lake and go, ha ha, we finally found this secret plane that they forgot to put in the shed. But that's not really what they're for. They're only 30 centimeter imagery. I mean, they only take 30 centimeter imagery. There's different angles that they'll get, sure, because it's a different lens, it's a different height in that. The Russians now have a digital electro-optical sensor instead of a wet film camera. So do the Germans. So do the Americans. They already mounted one in their OC-135, but then they canceled the treaty. So we're never going to test it, or they're never going to test it to find out if it's really, truly treaty certified. It would be. It was built to spec. It's just a formality to get certified. But point is, the satellite pictures, if any of the satellite pictures that are taken today by commercial satellite imagery or by crazy, amazing American super spy satellites that get 6 centimeter resolution, like the one that we saw. The Keyhole satellite was taking pictures
That
of
Trump,
the Iranian
tweeted out.
rocket. And that was an amazing picture. I mean, you
Oh,
can
that
see
was
the
awesome, yeah.
seams on the truck door and stuff.
I got way too
Amazing.
excited when I saw that come out.
Oh man.
Exactly. So that is the quality that American national technical means can get anywhere in Russia. So why would we need the Open Skies Treaty? Well, if the Russians propose, or if the Russians come up with a picture of an American base with some sort of chemical weapons dump that's been added onto it, nobody's going to believe them because it's a Russian picture from a Russian satellite, and we know the Russians are lying. But if you have a 34 country treaty and 34 nations agree that this camera that's mounted in this plane is absolutely tamper proof, everybody swears it, everybody had their technical teams crawl all over it, the Russians can then fly over the States, see something that they claim is a new missile site, some sort of chemical weapons factory or something, take pictures and use that to show everybody, no, we're not lying. This is the true picture.
Right.
It works both ways. When we fly over Russia, we're looking to catch them, not catch them like they forgot something out on the lawn, more like get proof that something is there, that they've increased the storage capacity of a building, or they're doing some shenanigans. It's a tamper-proof camera that provides irrefutable evidence of whatever is in the picture. So if the Russians are playing fast and loose with it, with a border issue to do with Georgia and an independence issue to do with the breakaway states, that's a small strip of space that they're not allowing to be overflown. And in their view, because they recognize the independence of these independent Georgian states, which nobody else does.
South Ossetia, and what's the other one called? Yeah.
Exactly. I can't pronounce them, so I didn't.
With an A, I think. ABKA, yeah, something.
Yeah, I'm not going to try. But there's a little strip of land there, 10 kilometers into Russia. It says in the Open Skies Treaty that you don't need to, or you shouldn't have any flights that are 10 kilometers from a country that isn't signatory to the treaty. So they're saying, well, these are two countries that are not signatory to the treaty, therefore we won't allow any flights into that space. The Georgians feel this is obviously not true because they feel it's still part of Georgia that's occupied land from the Russians. And this is a diplomatic border dispute issue, not an open skies issue. This isn't that the Open Skies Treaty isn't working. This is that Russia's complicated and there's all sorts of other problems that have nothing to do with the Open Skies Treaty. And then the other thing about flying over Kaliningrad, which people like Tom Cotton like to portray as blocking or impeding or stopping flights over Kaliningrad, is not true. They're not stopping flights. They're reducing the amount of distance that can be overflown over the enclave of Kaliningrad Oblast. So it's a small area the size of Connecticut, and they're saying that other countries shouldn't be allowed to tie up their airspace all day by doing a lawnmower pattern or zigzag all over the country. Because when they fly over the states, they fly through New York State, do maybe one zig or a zag, and they're gone. They're off to the next state. They don't do a lawnmower pattern over all of New York State or over Connecticut or over anything. It's always just sort of a straight through flight. And that's kind of what they expect. And there is nothing in the treaty to say that they are allowed to restrict this flight down to 500 kilometers. But the alternative is that any country could fly 5,500 kilometers over Kaliningrad. And they're saying that 5,500 kilometers is too much and unreasonable, because the idea would be that you would get part of Kaliningrad in any single flight, not busy up the airspace and block flights from landing or taking off. And that's really where they call it a safety issue. So it's saying that it's a flight safety issue, and it's more complicated than just saying they're blocking flights, because they're just not. There was at least one or two flights over Kaliningrad at the beginning of this year. So they're definitely still flying, even with the Americans on board. It was a joint Estonian, Latvian, American flight, I think. And anyway, the flights are still going on. All the proof is there. The facts are there, but we're just being lied to by elected and appointed officials.
Right.
Well, that's what I thought you said was interesting. Or actually, let me ask you one more question before I get to that. So you said everything is foolproof. You can use this as evidence at the UN, like they did back in the the Cuban Missile Crisis, and show, look, you guys had missiles there.
Exactly.
Is there a real
Exactly.
chain
And
of
why would
command?
we believe an American U-2 picture when we could have a joint picture taken from something certified by 34 countries?
Right. So is there a chain of command then, and once the aircraft lands, that the imagery is then taken, and there's a I guess a chain of command like they do, or a chain of custody, I should say, chain of custody like they do with evidence in a court case to prove that it hasn't been photoshopped or anything.
Since the beginning of the treaty, it's always been about the developing of the film. So they had to physically have custody, put a seal on the box or whatever they did to make sure that the negatives weren't tampered with. Then the overflown country and the country that did the overflight would both meet at the where they're doing the processing, and one would be able to monitor the other one to make sure that the box is opened correctly, the right number of rolls or whatever come out, that nothing's being tampered with. So they had all this custody of ownership sort of stuff straightened out. So they modernized it in around 2010 to start accommodating digital stuff. I don't know how they did that, but they did come up with a proprietary USB stick, if I remember correctly. I think it's USB based, but it's a proprietary media that's tamper proof. So you can't just use your regular ordinary USB stick to move the files around. It needs to go on this thing. And now, of course, they don't need to develop the imagery, so I think they can give the imagery to the overflown country pretty much right away. I'm not sure what the timeline is on that, but they no longer need to have somebody monitoring developing of actual wet film.
That's crazy. It's probably the only wet film they still do.
Yeah, I have a video here I'm showing. I mean, you can see all the old. Look at those.
Oh man, they still got all the chemicals and shit. Oh man, that's crazy.
And the big,
These Air Force guys are like, I just wanted to work on nukes, and now I'm making like 70s camera film.
Yeah, X-ray printer stuff.
Holy crap, that's crazy.
And they're incredibly high resolution pictures. I mean, they're really great pictures. The film pictures that they take, and they can even use those. They use the same, or they have used the planes for national disasters as well, taking pictures of, I think it was Nicaragua or something. They flew down to Central America and took some pictures after a devastating hurricane. And it's good to have a plane like that to fly around and take pictures of. And now they're saying that they're going to just get rid of these planes. And that was leaked by, I don't remember who that was. Oh yeah, it was 2 or 3 officials to was the New York Times, I think. Were told that the American administration, now they're out of the treaty, want to dispose of these planes. And there was rumors saying that, well, this is going to prevent the Biden administration from hopping back into the treaty as soon as they get into power. But really, it doesn't matter, because the Biden administration, or any administration, is going to have an uphill battle getting back into the treaty around the Senate, through the Congress, however they're going to do it. Right. But they also don't need to rush. They aren't on the schedule this year at all. In 2021, there are no American flights that are scheduled for the Open Skies Treaty because they're out. So everybody else has already agreed on their quotas. Everybody's going to fly all of 2021 with their plane, without the American planes, with everybody else's planes. And if the Americans can get back in the game by 2022, well, great. But otherwise, they don't need to worry about 2021. Like it doesn't matter if they burn those planes on the tarmac. They're very old, and they don't really need to be part of the fleet, I don't think. Many other countries use much smaller planes to do this job. And I don't know whether or not somebody threw this down as an obstacle to pick such an expensive plane and try and build up such a large business case to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on new planes. The Canadians use a Hercules. a different Hercules. It's not even just one Hercules, because we have a pod that goes underneath the wing, and the pod has the sensors. So wouldn't it be a better idea to slap a pod underneath the wing and then use a Hercules? I think you have a couple of spare. Or I think it's Sweden or Norway or somebody. Many other countries are using smaller jets, like a small biz jet sort of thing, or a Challenger or something like that. Like
And
they don't need to be terribly large.
Sorry, did I hear you correctly, or do I remember correctly? Last time we had you on, you mentioned too that if a country that's in the treaty does not have an airplane, that the host country has to provide one to them.
They don't have to. The host country doesn't need to provide it exactly. They can ask for it. So you could. Earlier on this year, it was a Romanian plane, I think, that the French were using to overfly Russia. So I don't remember where they met up, but probably the French flew to Romania and then from Romania into Russia. But that's pretty normal. The Romanians and other countries that do have the planes are allowing other countries to ride shotgun. So it's totally normal. The Americans could rejoin in 2022 and not even have their own plane. They could just fly on the Canadian plane.
Yeah, U.S. could use Romanian planes.
Right.
Or
Yeah,
like... and have and do. It's quite normal. They buddy up all the time.
Oh, it's just kind of more of whatever is available at the time, because you obviously don't have a ton of these planes laying around everywhere, like F-16s or something.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So they can only use the Americans can only use their 2 certified planes, but one of those planes was in the middle of being rebuilt or something, and getting the new digital electro-optical sensor put it in, and the other one was just breaking down. So they wouldn't actually allow the U.S. Air Force, and somebody can Freedom of Information Act this. The U.S. Air Force has a policy that says they don't fly the OC-135 from December to the end of February, if I remember correctly, because it's basically too fragile. They don't want to get it lost in the middle of nowhere Russia, which has happened. They've broken down in the middle of Russia, problems with their landing gear, problems with the generator, problems with the door not closing. So one of the times that they were flying out of Russia, the OC-135 couldn't pressurize the cabin because the door wouldn't seal. So they had to all put on oxygen and fly out of eastern Russia to Japan. So that's the quality of the aircraft.
Holy crap.
Cabin fills of smoke, the toilet backs up. It's got a lot of great stories with it, but you can really get rid of those planes. You don't really want them anymore.
Yeah, those old planes that like the military seems to not really like super need for missions. Like me and Greg,
Oh yeah,
we got a piece of the old Golden Knights airplane.
I forget the name of it. But that was the last flight, the last public they had on that flight.
Yeah,
they were retiring it after that.
Yeah, and when the thing landed, it landed on the tarmac and died. It died as it landed, and we couldn't taxi back to the run. We couldn't taxi back to where everybody was. We had to get off the airplane in the middle of the fucking runway and walk back. It was crazy.
Just gave up.
Yeah, I mean, and they were telling us like this thing is a piece of shit. I mean, and you could feel it just shaking real bad the whole time. We were just like, they were like, the door doesn't shut, the seat belt doesn't work or whatever.
They had no doors; it was open for them to jump out.
Yeah.
We were the only ones without parachutes.
Yeah,
they were good if anything happened.
Yeah, that was the thing. Everybody had parachutes except for me and Greg and my old ladies out there, and there were other reporters that were out there. But yeah, I mean, they're rough, man. I mean, it was just a rough plane. I think they finally replaced it.
Yeah, it's done with now. But
yeah,
that was one of the last. I believe it was the last time, at least that they were going to have reporters, the media, flown publicly. But
we were on the last voyage of that plane. Jeez, could have died on that thing.
So, with everything in the news about open skies, I haven't been following it close enough, and with them finally pulling out of it, I thought there must be some new arguments, new something going on. So before we started today, I did some research.
Well, I think the only new stuff is various rumors of how they're going to get back in. And one of the rumors is that...
rumors?
The only thing new is how are we going to get back in?
Maybe.
Yeah. And that's basically, how can you find some legal way to get back into the treaty? Maybe it's that they never left the treaty, because they were in contravention of I don't remember, whatever Congress had passed, if it was a law or a bill or what, I don't remember. I need to go back to Schoolhouse Rock and check this out.
They did some weird stuff too, right? Like, didn't they reduce funding for it? They did different things to try to, kill it.
Yeah, and they've been trying to kill it since at least 2013. So this isn't like a new. Like, I hate it when people say, "Oh, Trump did such and such with the Open Skies." Trump hasn't done jack with the Open Skies Treaty. It's all of his advisors that have been doing things and slipping things under his nose. He doesn't care. He doesn't know. But the people who are campaigning against the treaty have been around a long time, and they're smart. And they're the Tom Cottons, the Tim Morrisons. These people aren't stupid. They're very smart, and they're insiders, and they know what they're doing. They know how to sabotage a treaty. They killed the anti-ballistic missile defense treaty. They killed the JCPOA. Any treaty they get near, they kill.
INF.
And now the problem is that a lot of their allies have been polluting the landscape so much that people who are for the Open Skies Treaty also have their minds polluted with these sort of untruths. Like I mentioned the golf course before. I think I mentioned the golf course before. Pretty black and white. Did the Russian Open Skies plane fly over Donald Trump's golf course while he was vacationing there? Did that offend him? And was that one of the reasons for leaving the Open Skies Treaty, as was said in the New York Times and the New York Times opinion piece that Tim Morrison wrote? It's not true. It's just simply not true. It didn't happen. Why? Because I follow planes. So we take the flight data.
That's the first time I've heard that.
I think that was
It was in 2017 when you saw all the news about it buzzing. There was a Russian plane that was buzzing the White House and stuff, and it was flying low over DC and all that. Immediately, the next article after that was about the plane also flying over the golf course, and it wasn't true. It was true that it flew near the golf course. It didn't fly over the golf course.
Right.
If somebody, the idea was that they were spying on Trump or somehow nefariously buzzing, the golf course and whatever. And it's all just made up. Like, it didn't happen.
They were about going down to Jacksonville or some shit, right?
Well, they were about 6 miles east. So I mean, that's close, but the cameras point down, so they weren't that close. They only get about a mile or two either side of the plane. 1 point something miles, I think it was, at say 4,000 feet or whatever they were flying at. So it was well out of frame. It was just to play on people's ignorance and make it sound more sexy.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure nobody's going to allow a non-state airplane to fly over the president. I don't think it's going to ever happen.
They can. They do, at least for the Open Sky stuff. And that's fine. Like if he's in the White House and they fly over the White House, who cares? There's a team of American U.S. Air Force people on the plane making sure they stick to the flight plan and stay at the right levels and everything. The plane's inspected before.
That's what I mean.
Like
yeah.
break in with a gun to their head, right. Like land this.
Well, they don't. I mean, they're just. It would if they were off. And it does happen. Sometimes they're a little too far to the left, a little too far to the right. Then those pictures from that amount are scratched. Basically, they say they're not permissible. You can only take pictures along a very tight corridor if you're at the right height and the right speed and all this stuff. So when I'm looking, that's actually another good point. So about that flight data. So the flight data doesn't just show you where they flew. It also shows what they took pictures of, because the plane had to be flying level. The plane had to be at a constant altitude of one of 3 altitudes, and it needed to be at a steady speed. And it's probably going to be the same speed for every picture, like 300 knots or something. So if you see them at 10,000 feet at 300 knots, flying flat over Groom Lake, they're taking pictures of Groom Lake. First of all, because it's Groom Lake, and second, because they're not banking, they're not speeding up, they're not climbing or anything. So if you start looking around where their flight plans are, anytime they're making a turn, they're not taking pictures. Anytime they're climbing or they're going really fast at a high altitude, they're just hopping between sites. You can sort of tease out what they're really looking at.
Right.
And the Open Skies Treaty was obviously made before any of this flight tracking stuff was going on. But I think that's another reason why some of the Americans want to get out of the treaty, because now we can see what the Russians are looking at, and we can debunk the crazy stories about going after infrastructure just by looking on flight radar. They're not blocked. They're using Mode S. We can watch and triangulate where the plane's going. Their new plane uses ADS-B, and it's even better. You can see every little detail of it, whether you get 4 receivers on the ground picking up their Mode S, or you just get one with ADS-B. You get almost the whole picture of where they've been over the States.
Right.
When
Yeah.
we fly over Russia, it's a little more sketchy.
And that's I think that's what is being demonstrated. I don't know what each color means, but on this map of the flight pass, I believe that's the altitude they flew at, right?
Right.
It's normally what it is on the flight tracking
Yeah.
websites. The different colors are different altitudes. But
Yeah,
going back
exactly.
to like I said, I like you really got to get all your information directly from the horse's mouth, right? You don't want to like if you just watch CNN to find out what Trump's saying, you're going to get a corrupted view. If you just watch Fox News to find out what future President Biden is saying, you're going to get a corrupted view, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, I went to Tom Cotton's website, and he has a copy of his op-ed in the Washington Post. And yeah, like I said, it's all the same stuff. Pretty much he brings up Kaliningrad. He talks about the border with Georgia, which we've already talked about. The other point he brings up, too, I'd like to get your idea on this, is that Russia is gaining a lot more than we are, than the U.S. is from this treaty. Talking about how Russia doesn't have the same satellite capability that the U.S. has, so that they have more to gain from the treaty than the U.S. does.
Um, I don't. I think that the Americans and the Russians get the least from the treaty because they do have the
Right.
well. I mean, also French and Canadian. We all have satellites now. It's not about getting better imagery or more imagery. It's about getting irrefutable imagery. So this is where I was saying like Cotton is he's not wrong. I mean, the Americans can see every square inch of the planet at an incredible resolution, as far as I know right now. But it's not about that. It's about getting imagery that you could then wave in somebody else's face and see, haha, here are scorch marks from rocket attacks that were being staged in, a breakaway republic or something. Here is a bunch of, tank treads that or tank markings across some field that seems to point like they were going into Ukraine or something. It's getting that irrefutable imagery that you can then take to a panel or a UN or something like that. And it's not about getting new or previously unseen imagery. It's the ruler, I guess, that's coming out. This is the stick. Once you get human intelligence, or you get satellite intelligence, or some other kind of intelligence that something happened somewhere, and you'd be able to see it from space, or you'd be able to see it from an Open Skies Treaty flight. You want to organize a flight, get over there, get pictures of it, so you can then say, haha, we've got irrefutable imagery that the Russians and the Americans and everybody agree is tamper-proof. We couldn't have photoshopped this.
Right.
Right.
And I think it's important. It's a good distinction you made too, where he's not technically wrong on some of the stuff. Maybe the U.S. is not getting as much out of it as Russia, because you're not here, like we mentioned before we started. You're not here necessarily to defend open skies or try to advocate for the U.S. staying in it or anything. It's just really trying to sort out the BS. And the BS,
Yeah,
there's BS on both sides, and I that's what I really appreciate.
Right.
if
It
the
doesn't matter what
argument was
side you're on, cut out the BS.
Yeah, and if the argument was just, well, like I said before, like sort of pro-gun sort of thing, do you want more or less restrictions on guns? Well, that's just sort of political and not related to defense exactly. But my point is that we know who the players are. We know what the facts are. And with the Open Skies Treaty, the same people who are campaigning against it are the people who are driving the message and who are sort of displaying their version of the facts. And the people who are trying to defend the treaty are on their heels. Oh, yeah. And the rest of the countries involved in the treaty, the other 33 countries, including Russia, don't agree that the Americans should leave. The German foreign minister has been quite explicit that he thinks it's a very bad idea for the Americans to leave and doesn't agree with their reasons. And you'd think we're all one generally friendly, happy NATO family. All of NATO is against the U.S. leaving. 10 countries of America's allies wrote a joint letter basically saying that this is a really bad idea and they really wish the Americans wouldn't. The rest of the countries didn't, mostly because they don't want to be seen as opposing the states, because a lot of the countries are much smaller, have defense deals, are looking for a new base or expanding a base in their borders. They don't want to piss off the Americans. So nobody approved, or nobody thought it was a good idea. Nobody agreed with the reasoning. They saw the same intelligence that we're told that we can't see, and they didn't agree with it. So why should we agree with it when they're not even showing us the evidence? They're claiming that there's intelligence that they have found that means that they should be leaving the treaty, but I can find no sign of that. And the only intelligence that they've mentioned before has all been very skewed. And it reminds me of, Yellow Cake and Iraq War stuff. It's all sexied up dossiers.
Yeah. What do you think about? Do you have any opinions on the INF Treaty? That's another one. You were mentioning different treaties that were pulled out of recently.
Not really. I don't. I am not as well versed on the INF Treaty as a lot of other people. So I would defer to Jeffrey Lewis or somebody like that to talk about that. Just because I don't believe the American intelligence because of the Open Skies Treaty stuff. So my problem is now I'm jaded because I can see that all the Open Skies quote unquote evidence or their reasoning behind it is all crap. So why should I believe the information that they're telling us about the INF Treaty?
Sure.
It sounds like the Russians were playing, were being sneaky, and wasn't it that they were allowed to fire a submarine launched missile at a test site, but not from a mobile launcher or something like that? Anyway,
there was some weird stuff in there. Yeah,
Right.
Yeah, it was something about how they had done the launch tests, and that this missile was going to have a longer range, but it wasn't being tested, or I don't remember. Anyway, point is, the Americans are saying the Russians cheated for the INF Treaty. Okay, maybe they did. I haven't seen the evidence, and I know the evidence for the Open Skies Treaty is all made up. So that doesn't improve their standing for me.
Yeah.
When they say, "Don't worry, trust us," I get worried.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I think it was Ronald Reagan had the famous, what was it, 7 famous words? We're from the government, here to help. Can't trust the government, man. Those are the scariest words.
I didn't know where
English
you were
language.
going with that, but man, that sucks. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think you should. The one I've really been nerding out about, I guess, is the Kennedy assassination. Right? Most people believe it was a conspiracy, and they have some valid points. You really can't just absolutely believe the government. I think that's really where it started to change. Everyone believes that the government back in the 50s, this early 60s, and then everyone became real skeptical. And it's true, you can't just openly believe everything they're telling you, but at the same time, you have to fact check. Yeah. I think the problem with a lot of conspiracy theories is they have a healthy skepticism of the government when it comes to that, but then they have no skepticism when it comes to people, who claiming there are conspiracies. Man, I mean, crazy claims.
I've been going down that rabbit hole with Rickover because I'm like, man, I know Rickover has some fucking design issues and he's deflecting this shit and he had something to do with all this shit. I don't know, man. Fucking maybe. I don't know. I don't know. I just have to wait for the data to come out. There's nothing I can really do. I mean, I can sit here and start spouting off all kinds of crazy shit, but I try not to do that.
Yeah. And with INF, I think there are other points to it too that could be valid, maybe not. But INF was only between the U.S. and Russia. That's it.
Right. So, and I'm not saying that the U.S. shouldn't have withdrawn from the INF Treaty. I'm just sort of saying I don't know, and I have my doubts only because of my experience with the Open Skies Treaty. It jades me when I can talk to my own country's military people and get the truth, and then I turn on the TV and I see something that's very different. Right. So I'm like, well, I don't question at all that the lieutenant colonel was telling me the truth. He was very upfront, and everything he said made sense. And he didn't necessarily say everything that I wanted him to say, like what I was thinking. He was really truly informing me about what was going on. Like I expected him to say that no, the Russians aren't inspecting or weren't looking at infrastructure, but instead he told me they're not looking at anything that we're not looking at. I'm like, oh, well, that's different. So when we were doing our flight, because early this year or last year, over Vladivostok, it was an American-Canadian joint flight in our Hercules over Vladivostok. I could see them following the rail line, and I could see them going over, where harbors were and where bases were and stuff. And again, it was very obvious that we were looking at military-industrial sort of places that could be pumping out trucks or tanks or ammo or whatever, and making sure that everything was still where it was last time. Same as they do to us.
Right.
And that's good. That was my point earlier too, is don't trust anyone.
Yeah, exactly.
Everyone's busy. You have lives, you have jobs, you have to do everything. But I wanted to go directly hear what Tom Cotton has to say about it, what his facts are. And again, you're not necessarily here to defend Open Skies, but then hear what you have to say about it.
Yeah.
And then maybe later on, I'll go back to Tom Cotton and see if he explains it, if he has any answers to the things you've said,
Right.
like that type of thing, right? Go back and forth. And I haven't seen any answers from that side.
People explain shit really poorly, especially now with social media. They don't really know how to get it across very quickly, and they don't know how to get it across in like a long form.
That's the problem.
Like how many politicians do you hear in a long form, interview like us, right? I mean, never happens, right? Just you get 5 minute little spurts on, if you're lucky, on Fox News or whatever, and that's it. That's what everybody's really getting. So,
and that's all anyone ever wants too. It seems like what's more interesting to read about? A big headline that says Russian spy plane flying overhead right now, or one explaining that no, look, we've had this treaty for a while, we do it too. Back and forth. Obviously,
Exactly.
the one is going to get the more attention.
I mean,
Exactly.
yeah, definitely. I mean, it's like your YouTube channel, right? You can make a 10-minute video on open skies, and it'll be huge, but nobody wants to listen for 2 hours. It's just people just get so lost. They want to get a quick bite, try to understand what's going on, and keep moving on because they got so much shit to do. I mean, everybody's just got too much shit to do. I hate to say it.
Yeah.
And that's why I think the bad part about open skies, it just gets left behind because there's just so much other political shit.
Oh yeah.
There's just so much stuff going on. Like, how the fuck can anybody keep up with all of this and this at the same time? It's like it's the same thing with military, right? That's one of the problems we have with trying to reach out to a bunch of people is everybody's just tied up in sports. Everybody's tied up in their own lives. Everybody's tied up in all this stuff. Now they got to figure out what's going on in the military. So so now we're, I don't know. It's just, there's just so much stuff going on. It's hard to keep up with all of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the problem. Like even with the Kennedy assassination, I'm going to see how many times I can bring that up during this podcast. No, but no one has time to read an 888 page, whatever it is, 888 page report, plus 26 more additional volumes of all the evidence, all the testimonies and all that to look through that. Nobody except me, I guess. I've pretty much read it all.
You gotta love it.
But right. So you hear
people
somebody
who are
make a
interested
claim
like
and
you
you're
can
like, oh.
distill it.
Yeah.
Right. And they want to listen to you, right? It's like, I want to go through all the treasure documents that they're releasing, but fuck, I don't have enough time to go through 900 pages of documents. Like,
You need the person who does have the time, and then you have to question their biases too, right?
Right. Who is this person?
What are they going to pick and choose to report on?
Right.
Which is always
That was one of the things with the Open Skies Treaty, that the number of officials that are quoted, I don't know how it keeps coming up, but when a reporter quotes a current, and in the past, say 4 years, a current White House official, what they're saying is an official of the Trump administration. And then they make some sort of statement that's pro destroying the Open Skies Treaty. And then they say, well, a White House official said that, an anonymous one. It's like, well, if you knew that it was Bolton, you would understand those words differently. Or if you knew it was Steve Miller, or if you knew it was Tom Cotton, or so, not a White House official, obviously, but these anonymous sources, everybody wants to romantically think that it's a deep throat, that it's some well-intentioned patriot who's leaking this, right? And it's not, right? It's one of these partisan, shills from the White House who are just continuing, like they're if somebody comes out against the White House's position, maybe they're a deep throat. But if they're parroting the White House's position, they're just not using their name because you know who they are, and you wouldn't believe them.
Right. Exactly. But it could also cut both ways too, right? Like when Biden gets in, it could be a leftover from the Trump administration, somebody in there who still wants to, or even now, a holdover from the Obama administration wanting to attack Trump. It's frustrating. I mean, obviously, as a journalist, you have to be able to protect your sources. If you don't, you're not going to have that source anymore.
Some of these journalists, I don't think they understand necessarily that issue is a partisan issue, and that these people who are in the White House already have been campaigning against the treaty for this many years. So when they hear that there's a story about that, or they get a call from their favorite insider, they go, oh, okay, I'll just run that through. And then a good journalist would then check those facts, and they'd find that, in the Washington Post, it says something very similar. And in the New York Times, it says something similar. But these are all the same guy or the same guys that have been polluting the information space. So you can find the same stuff about planes buzzing the golf course from multiple places. It's still wrong, but it is printed in multiple places. And I wish that journalists would take this as a fact, that the plane's presence it was an object. It was in space. It was seen. You can look it up. You don't need to believe somebody who tells you. Same thing with the ships. Actually, I've done it before with Lucas Thompson for Fox News.
Yeah.
He said that some ship had entered the Mediterranean, and I called him out and I said, "No, sorry, buddy, that ship is not yet in the Mediterranean. It's 200 miles west of the Mediterranean." Nope,
Right.
sorry, he deleted that and corrected it. Well, what he had gotten mixed up was the fleet, whichever fleet it was, had said it had entered their area of operations. Well, that it doesn't mean it's in the Mediterranean. It means it's in the Eastern Atlantic.
Right.
Northeastern Atlantic.
Right.
But anyway, that was where it got crossed. So did somebody feed that information to Lucas saying, I want you to say this is in the Mediterranean? Or did he just mix it up? And I think he probably just mixed it up. I don't think it was like a conspiracy or anything, but it could have been.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big believer in the fact that most people make dumb mistakes and they're not trying to actually fuck you over.
Right. It's the old,
I think they're just really stupid.
Yeah, the old adage is, don't attribute what you can attribute to stupidity to malice.
Right.
Don't if someone makes it, you don't necessarily jump to, oh, that person must be evil. Like, no, he's probably just stupid.
It's just so easy to tie it to evil when it's just somebody being really dumb.
And it draws in more attention. Like, look at how evil this person is there,
I would say even not necessarily stupid or anything, but I mean, the journalists are just not informed and they don't have a way to double check because the government doesn't tell them because they suppress all this information about the Open Skies Treaty.
Yeah,
so because the U.S. Air Force Public Affairs doesn't put the information out there, they have to rely on these quotes and they can't fact check them. So they run them and they put the disclaimer there saying so-and-so said blah, blah, blah. They didn't check it, but they said, that's their out. So-and-so did say that. Whether they were right or not, who's to say?
Isn't that kind of what happened during the Iraq War too? And I guess it could be anything. If you're president, you want to get your agenda pushed.
Absolutely.
Just leak a bunch of stories to all the media, about Iran is now developing nuclear weapons. They are doing it right now. Absolutely. They have them. They're right on the edge. Then all the news outlets report on it, and then you go on do a press conference and be like, "Wow, look at all these media sites are reporting it. It must be true. We need to do something about this." Yeah.
You got it 100% because you write opinion pieces. You get your friends to write opinion pieces. You get the various right-wing war hockey kind of think tanks that we all know to write their think pieces. And then, get some stuff in the Wall Street Journal, get some stuff in the New York Times, all opinion pieces. And then, the story is out there and people start cobbling it together and forget that these are opinion pieces of people who are agents of the American administration. And they're not necessarily telling the truth. And what boggles my mind is that people like John Bolton, there's an interview, you can find the video clip of it, of him saying that he would happily lie in order to protect freedom or something. And it was just so corny because he was basically saying, yeah, I'll lie to start a war. I'll lie to, do whatever it takes. And like, I don't really want him to lie and start a war. We've done that before. I was fully on board for the Iraq War. I was conned. I mean, we had yellow cake. We had, chemical trucks that were going to make, what do you call it? Bioweapons and stuff. We had the graphics. It was a full court press of
the mobile
propaganda.
What were they?
And it was all crap.
Yeah.
So since then, I don't think we should really trust anything we're told when we're told, trust us. We have the intelligence. Like, yeah, I believe you have the intelligence. You have the intelligence to mislead us.
Oh, yeah. And I think the important thing, too, is to be skeptical of your own side, too. Like, if you're a Democrat, be skeptical of Democrats, too. Don't just, because it seems to confirm what you believe. Or if you're
I already don't like several people that I've seen mentioned for the Biden administration. I'm quite concerned, and I'm going to be bitching at them, and I'm going to have allies of the Open Skies Treaty telling me, Steph, why don't you settle down? Why are you hurting your own side?
Like that type of thing, yeah. No.
And I'm like, well, it's not. They're not my side. I'm my side.
Exactly. Yeah.
So if the say, I would say the Democrats are more on the right side, but the information that gets into these feel good Open Skies pieces also has that underlying information of the golf course overflight, or maybe satellites could do the job or whatever. And these are all talking points from the Republican side, but they bleed in to the articles that people who are trying to write a positive article don't know that they're procreating these sort of talking points, because satellites can't replace it at all because they aren't tamper proof. And the treaty isn't worth withdrawing from. So says 32 other allied countries. Like, I would think that if Trump in the middle of the room made a statement about any treaty and he was the only one of 34 countries, people would get the idea that maybe this isn't the right choice. Like, whether it's climate stuff or anything, why would I ever trust Trump for one of these things? But it just doesn't make sense to me that we would take him at his word or at his administration's word on anything without any evidence. And the evidence they've presented doesn't mean that the US has to withdraw. They haven't shown anything to show the Russians are using these imagery, these imaging flights as anything nefarious, or no more nefarious than we do. Everybody wants to see what's behind everybody else's borders. And all this information is unclassified. American satellite national technical means are highly classified.
Oh, yeah.
And this is just allowing all the smaller countries that may not have the same resources to get intelligence themselves. And even for the bigger countries, it's better to get these unclassified images that can be used more readily in slides internally, or take it to the UN, or whatever operation. These aren't super spy sort of missions. These are joint operations to get unclassified, tamper-proof imagery.
That's interesting. I don't think you covered that last time, the direct kind of chain of custody. And I did not know that, at least. Maybe I did know it and forgot, but
that's kind of the whole deal why all these countries love it.
Huh. But real quick, before I forget, Commando Store.
Yeah, we totally forgot about Commando Store.
That's perfect. Everyone's listening right now.
Yeah.
Don't click off. Just a quick 30-second thing. CommandoStore.com. Commando is spelled with a K. It's an online military surplus store. They got a whole bunch of... They always got funny stuff on
What is this?
I don't know.
What the hell?
I almost don't want to know.
Well, you got to go to the waxy boots.
Oh, yeah. Anyway. You go on there and check them out. They always have a whole bunch of just random things.
Oh my
all the
god!
time.
What in the hell?
They still have the night
Everything
vision.
from plush toys to night vision goggles, I guess.
Yeah. CommandoStore.com.
Concerned
Commando.
citizen, peaceful protester. That's what I need.
Admin. There you go.
Yeah.
Active shooter. Oh,
Active shooter. Why would you want that tag?
They always have a bunch of funny
People
stuff
are
on
so
here.
weird, man.
So go check them out. Commando Store. Commando spelled with a K. Store.com. And you get 5% off. Don't laugh at the Commando Store.
I'm laughing at active shooter. I'm just imagining some dude walking into, ironically walking into, some kind of, Black Lives Matter protest wearing a tan vest with active shooter on it. Oh my God. Ugh, just people are so stupid nowadays. I can't believe anything.
Anyway, so you get 5% off your first order with coupon code. What's the coupon code, Eric?
TACOPS.
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 TACOPS. No space
Capital
between
O.
that. Is there? I don't think there's any capitals.
If you don't put the capital O, then it's Taco PS.
Oh.
Yeah.
No, but when you actually type in the coupon
Oh,
code,
yeah, fair enough, yeah.
it's Taco PS.
Yeah, Taco PS.
Anyway. Anything else you want to cover about Open Skies, or do you have any other topics, Eric? I think you wanted to talk about...
I mean, I wanted to cover CubeSats, but he's talking about how they're you can't trace them. So I was thinking, if we were launching a bunch of CubeSats, you could just, hey, you guys can go fuck yourselves to launch your own CubeSats, but you really can't, because anybody can go up there and mess with them, or they could just flick them out of orbit, or whatever you do with a CubeSat.
Flick them out of orbit.
Yeah. But the other thing you were talking about is one of the things that really interests you was the Manhattan Project tour, and how you came down to Albuquerque and you went through all that. I was curious how that went for you, because that's one of the things I really want to do is go through New Mexico and maybe hook up with Sandia and walk out to the lab out there and see what they got going on. But I was curious how that went for you.
It was beautiful. I was there for 10 days on work. I wasn't actually in anything really Manhattan project-y. It was more like an office building, sort of in and out kind of thing. But just sort of, you see off in the distance various mountains and buildings and stuff. You're like, what is that? So, in the evening, I would go back to my hotel and look up, what was that thing in the distance? And it was like this trestle for, EMP testing, or, a rocket sled range or something. There was all this really cool stuff, and a a big mountain where they used to store nuclear, the Manzano base, where they used to store the nuclear weapons before they moved them into the new place on the base.
Right.
But yeah, really, really cool site. And it was like looking at history. I mean, it was the same thing. As a Canadian, I get a lot of American TV. So when I flew into New York for the first time, it was before 9/11. I saw the Twin Towers. They banked over the city, and looking out the window, I was like, this is cool. This is like looking at the intro to Barney Miller. And I was like, this is freaky.
Right.
This New York place really exists. It's not just on the TV.
Yeah.
So then when I went down to Albuquerque, I'm like, hey, this is what Bugs Bunny was talking about. And, I looked off in the distance and saw these places. And it was a neat place to see the infrastructure that you've heard about and that, has been in lots of movies and history. And I would love to do a whole driving tour across different DOE sites. But again, I thought that would be unhealthy. So, by one way or another.
Probably.
Yeah.
And,
I know Eric really
so
wants to go up to the Pantex.
God, I want to do it so bad. I want to go to Pantex. I want to do all that shit. I want to do all of it.
Y12, Nevada site, all that stuff. It'd be awesome.
Man, yeah, we just need to find some kind of channel that'll sponsor us to give us a bunch of money to drive around and see all this shit.
Oh, driving's not too bad. Yeah, come down here sometime, maybe when all this whole pandemic passes over, hopefully soon. We'll do that. That'll be fun. Because I really want to do it. I've been talking about it for years now. I want to go to, are you aware of Tikaboo Peak?
I don't know that one.
So it's the only mountain that you can actually see, the only place you can see
pull
Area
it up?
51
Can you pull
from.
it up?
Sure.
I want to see it.
It's the only place you can see Area 51 from. And it's like 20 miles off in the distance, so you can just barely see it. You have to get a real good camera with a telescopic lens. But you can actually see the base. And I've talked to a guy who's been up there before. He said he would meet me and go up there sometime. I want to do a live podcast.
Like a live podcast up on Tikaboo Peak.
Maybe once Starlink gets going.
Yeah, we'd have to
Tikaboo
hike
Peak
up there.
should be ready. Yeah, here it is. So it's a big mountain here. You have to hike all the way up, and you could just barely see the base all the way through here. Here's Area 51.
Wow.
But yeah, it's way off in the distance. I guess you used to be able to go up on top of, there was another mountain called Freedom Ridge, which was somewhere around here.
Did somebody get in trouble or something? Or?
Yeah, and then the government bought all that land, so now you have to go all the way back to Tikaboo Peak, way back here.
Are you familiar with Trevor Paglin's work?
No.
Trevor did some of the photography from one of those mountaintops with extreme lenses, and you could get like the wavy heat coming off the desert and some bomber or some secret plane or something in the background, all distorted by the hangars and stuff. It's pretty cool.
Was it Area 51?
I'm pretty sure it was Area 51, or maybe it was a Nevada test site. I don't remember which.
Those would be fun. I did a cross-country trip. I had to bring a car back from LA to New York. That was one of the most fun things I've done in my life. Just driving all the way across country. Starting out in LA, I went to Venice Beach, hung out there for a while. And then, you drive through the mountains, you get out into the desert, out in the middle of nowhere. We stayed in Vegas for the night. But you pass a bunch of stuff. So when you're leaving Los Angeles, you get over the mountains here, you'll end up in, passing Edwards Air Force Base, depends on the path you take. But also Plant 42, which is, a big secretive facility that they have there.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of stuff to see. And that's something I'm really interested in, too. I would love to do that.
Yeah, going around to the different area sites, that'd be cool, too, man.
Eric thinks we'll be able to get into Area 51.
I just want to walk up and be like, hey, man, hey, we're cool with the Navy. Just let us just go hang out. You don't have to show us what's going on. Just let us on. We just want to go hang out on the salt flat and just not do shit, We'll just put a tent out here. It'll be cool. Just let us hang out. We just want to be cool out here.
Talk to public affairs.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I think they would.
Area 51? No way.
They'll just take a holiday for that day and just let us go hang out.
They won't even admit it exists. They'll be like,
we don't have to say Area 51. We want to go to what is that? What do they call it? Topapa?
Tonopah? Yeah, Tonopah's
Tonopah, yeah.
I should probably turn my thing on so I'll know. There's a lot of cool sites to go out there. I had to step away for a second. Did you say you did take that Albuquerque trip?
I was down in Albuquerque, but
You did?
who? Me?
Yes, you.
Yes.
Yeah, he did a whole tour. Yeah.
Yeah, 10 days. It was late 2000s. I think it was like 2009. Was it 2007? I don't remember. It was a great time. I loved it.
And the reason they're so secret is just because they have flat land. That's it. That's what a lot of the secret areas are, especially with like nukes and stuff. They just need flat land to test. So they just put a bunch of fucking they just put a bunch of aircraft places on salt flats.
See all these
and then if you test nukes,
every one of those were a nuke.
Well, then they figured out that it was easier to shoot. Well, once we shot nukes with 3-stage rockets, it's better to just hit an atoll because it's flat.
Well, the atoll was before this, and there was only one full end test where we actually shot it on a missile, and I forget the name of it. But usually they was detonated from a tower or from a balloon or something, and then they had the comprehensive test ban treaty where you had to test them underground.
Right.
Or maybe I'm getting that reversed.
I don't know.
Atmospheric test ban treaty. Then you had to test them underground, and that's what all these craters are. They actually tested them. They buried them in the ground, detonated them.
That's what we should go. We should go tour that.
You can.
We'll just go each hole to hole.
And there's one if you.
There is a tour.
Jeez, look at that, man.
Is that one big one? I don't know what shot that was from.
Wee.
But yeah,
that's a meteor right there.
Sites to visit. You know, before I even moved to Texas here, I had never even seen an active military aircraft in the air before until we went to that air show. You have nothing to say about that.
What, Alliance Air Show?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The F-22s, F-35s. It was popped my cherry. That was fun.
Oh, yeah, man.
But yeah, now I kind of got the bug. I want to travel around and see these different sites.
I want to see some nukes.
I spent enough time looking at Google Earth imagery. See them in real life.
I mean, I think the Navy would be cool with us going out to the Kwajalein Atoll, right? I think it'd be like, hey, man, it's cool. Just come hang out with us. I want to see some nukes flying. I think they'd be cool with it.
We're going to bring Steffan Watkins, so just make sure Tom Cotton ain't anywhere nearby.
Yeah, we just need some...
He will kick his ass.
Oh. I'd have choice words.
Good times. Oh, well, I don't have anything else to talk about. I think that's pretty much it. Just get an update on I was going to say Cold War. Jeez, man.
Updated on the Cold War.
God, I got so much stuff I'm trying to look at right now.
So, what else is new with you? Any future plans? Now that Open Skies, you said there's already rumors about joining it again.
Yeah, I mean, the rest of the countries are still involved in it. And I'm still interested in getting more information from the Canadians, or really more information from their flights over Russia, whether that's through open source means or whether that's just getting more information from freedom of information, or rather access to information in Canada. I'm still interested in using the idea that these flights are pinpointing interesting sites of military interest, and I'd like to know what the Russians are interested over here, and I'd like to know what we're interested in over there, and what is it that we keep going back to every year and keep taking imagery of to see the delta between the different flights.
Yeah,
clearly and everybody in the treaty except for the current American administration says that it's a valuable treaty and it's worthwhile saving and pursuing, and I think it's rather interesting that it's conducted in such secrecy, yet it's still unclassified imagery. They don't want to. The OSCC, which operates the treaty, doesn't release their minutes or anything like that. You have to really scrounge for getting any information. And previous American administrations were kind enough to post a lot of the information on the State Department website. But not so surprisingly, when the Trump administration came in, they redesigned the site and got rid of all that. So you can still find the information, but it's only in the archive and it's only updated till 2016.
Yeah.
Man, it's crazy looking at that picture on
the
pop marks.
Yeah, but then that flight path, and if you want me, I'll send you that file too with all the different military sites I have.
Yeah, for sure.
Most of them in Russia.
AML or something?
Yep.
Oh, awesome. Perfect.
Yeah, I got most of them all in Russia, most of them in the U.S. And if anyone else wants it, join the Discord server. I have it posted there for free for anyone who wants it. It's something I always wanted. I always wanted a map of every military site mapped and marked on it. And then I kind of got in a position where I could have other people help me do it. I can't do it all myself.
Yeah.
No, that's
Cool
perfect
thing.
because I've got a lot of the tracks, and what I would do is I'd follow where the plane was flying and try and figure out, what it flew over. But it's, without having that underlayer of having all the push pins, it's kind of like it takes a long time.
Oh yeah, I can imagine.
And
Yeah, just
Evergreen
looking at this.
Intel, I have to tell you that she did a great job going over the flights in France. She picked out, I don't know, a dozen sites. I've been sitting on the information for weeks and haven't put it in a QGIS map to show where the Russians flew over France.
Yeah,
But,
she's definitely helped me out a lot too. I love that. I love that lady. You should definitely follow her on Twitter.
The other one we didn't mention,
Evergreen
you were
Intel.
thinking about mentioning, was Warship Cam.
Yeah, and Worship
Oh,
Cam.
yeah.
Yeah, we were talking about Worship Cam too. If you want to,
He does great work.
See live feeds of actual ships pulling in and out of port. I mean, it's pretty unadulterated information. You don't have to worry about him not being credible or not because there's a video of it.
Yeah, and I don't
Yeah.
think we talked about it on the podcast. We talked about it before we started, but just the amount of information you can get from open sources now. I mean, like this kind of stuff, you'd have to have a Russian sneak into the country with a false identity, all this stuff. Rent an apartment somewhere in Point Loma or whatever. Oh,
Right.
sound.
Yeah.
Yeah, a few decades ago anyway, yeah.
Yeah, right. Back in the Cold War, yeah. And now it's just available for anyone on Twitter. There's Gerald Ford leaving Norfolk. Yep, just left today.
Do you remember 10 years ago, the Aviationist had an article saying that there were refueling planes over Iraq that were being spotted by flight trackers, and the U.S. Air Force didn't really care. But then when they posted it to Twitter, then they cared.
Oh yeah.
It was like that the information was out there and visible to the Russians, the Turks, or the Iranians, or whoever, didn't matter. But as soon as the public knows,
See,
we don't want everybody knowing what we're doing.
That's the funny about the funny part about Open Skies is it's all supplied by that said country, but now we just got nerds hanging out. They got nothing else better to do besides take pictures of fucking ships pulling in and out. They don't give a fuck. They just want the Twitter feed. They just want the followers,
Well, the ship
And here you
spotters are
go.
fantastic.
Yeah, here you
I
go.
contacted, there was a couple of Russian ships that were coming into Shanghai a few years back that had been off the coast of Nicaragua. And I think it was Nicaragua. And anyway, they were coming into Shanghai, and there was no recent pictures of these ships. So I just emailed a bunch of ship spotters in Shanghai. And they were more than happy to get pictures because they're taking all sorts of pictures of ships that are not interesting to me all day.
Right.
And they were just excited that somebody was actually interested in a ship that they were nearby.
Exactly. Yep.
So they got the best pictures ever. Rust marks and everything. It was great.
I mean, especially when it comes to the submarine bases in the UK, there's just a lot of dudes just retired in the UK, got enough money to just hang out on the beach and just take pictures of stuff pulling into all kinds of places out there. It's great, man.
Yeah.
Wow.
And of course, there's Yorick, who's taking pictures at the Bosphorus Straits.
Yeah, the Bosphorus Straits is an interesting one because it's a strait. So you get to see everything coming in and out. Whereas, you have Warship Cam seeing stuff out of San Diego. It could be kind of anything, right?
Yeah.
But the Bosphorus Strait, I mean, that's all you get. And so you see HMS Echo pull in and out. You see that one ship that is allowed to go in, pull in and out. There's no question. And it's good on the same type of, talking about open skies, it's the same deal, right? Now everybody has that open accountability of, the HMS Echo pulled in on this time. She went there, she did this thing, whatever she was doing out there, and then pulled right back out like she was supposed to, right? So there's no question on the Montreal Convention about, there was 4 ships in there and nobody said anything, and
Yeah, it's all public.
Yeah, it's nice to have that accountability because nobody can argue against you, right?
Yeah.
But anyways. So, you got anything else,
I don't know.
Gregory?
I've covered everything. I got all my answers for Tom Cotton if I ever run into him. No, he's from Arkansas, right?
Arkansas.
Yeah. Ted Cruz is here in Texas.
Yeah, we got Ted Cruz.
He's another one, right?
Yeah, if you run into him, you have some words with him too.
Okay.
I know this guy.
And again, I don't want to pick on Republicans in total necessarily. Like I said, it's Democrats.
No, there are
too.
some good ones.
Exactly. Well, not only that, but I mean, Ted Cruz might be right about some stuff. He might be wrong about some stuff, and I think that's the most important thing. If you're like, hey, I'm a Republican, and this guy you're talking about, Tom Cotton's a Republican. Well, he's on my side. I'm going to defend him. This is not right. You got to call out your own side, right?
Right.
That's the most important thing, because that guy might be right about some stuff. Yeah, I might agree with him mostly, but no one's perfect. Everyone has their own biases. Everyone has their own agendas and everything.
Man, especially when you're in the whirlwind of fucking politics. Holy shit! It's like playing sports. You're just going all in one side, right?
Yeah, you don't want to become a cheerleader.
You got to question yourself, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's the most important takeaway
Right.
of this. You can still like Tom Cotton, but you can't like his Open Skies Treaty opinions.
Just pay attention to when we're being marketed to, when we're being lied to, and that like a lot of the wiggle words that they use, these aren't people who are making mistakes. Like Tom Cotton knows every detail about the Open Skies Treaty. Tim Morrison knows every detail. He was the main guy behind destroying it after Bolton left, and the architect of, even before Bolton left. I think he was hired specifically to get rid of it. These guys are all working together, and it's not like a Illuminati conspiracy. It's more like a golf club scratching of backs. It's everybody's pointing in the same direction. They're all trying to get the same things done. They're all trying to get their campaigns financed, right. And they're all doing what they feel like they need to. You can watch, like, if you look up Open Skies Treaty stuff, and you way back in the archives, old AP articles, old Reuters articles, you can see from 2002 till about 2010 to 2013, there isn't a single article that was published of anything negative about the Open Skies Treaty. By about 2013, when the Obama administration certified or actually the State Department or the technical team certified that the first Russian digital electro-optical sensor was fine, like fully treaty compliant, that's when things went off the rails. And around that same time, it was the DIA who didn't want the camera certified because they couldn't be sure what the sneaky Russians were doing with this digital camera. And while they couldn't find anything wrong with it, they were sure there was some other nefarious thing going on.
Right.
That's paranoia, guys.
Yeah. But to
that's
a certain
science.
extent, though, you almost have to be, like, no one knows how computers work, right? No one person knows.
Who knows how that works?
You don't know. Well, you don't know all. Like, if you ever open up Task Manager, you know how many things you have, services and everything running in the background?
Oh, yeah.
Computer hacking is a real thing, all that stuff. And I'm not saying this to try to defend him necessarily.
Yeah,
but
and
this is it, that they were,
but if you can't find
their
anything,
job,
well,
the
that's their
DIA's
job
is to be
Right.
suspicious, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Like,
and we talked to Greg Kursak, and he's talking about how when he would help go through the certification process of the nuclear missiles, and he's like, we have a vacuumed top. Like, you could literally not cheat at all whatsoever with this top. But they were going to question us on every single anything
He's like,
at
you
all.
couldn't even fit a pencil in there. It was so tight.
They were like,
They're like,
we
oh,
don't
no,
care.
you're sneaking in extra warheads or something. Like,
Right, exactly. Because they were like, they want to. It's a game, right? It's a war.
It's all
game,
politics,
right?
yeah.
It's a war game, right? So if you have a way to push your advantage, you push that advantage, right? So, you guys are assholes, and you're fucking, putting in these. What is this little like pinhole thing that could be a sensor or whatever? You just play the game, right?
Yeah. And it's
all
not even
they're
about
doing.
who's right or wrong.
Right.
It doesn't matter if you're right or wrong.
Right.
It gets
But
Machiavellian at that point, right?
Unlike the INF Treaty, where it was just a Russia-U.S. thing, this is a whole bunch of different countries. So we have 32 other countries that have also gone over the same sensor, and all their technical teams. Not all 34 countries send in technical teams, like a couple dozen. But anyway, they have all also certified that this sensor is fine. And the same sensor that they certified in 2013, the Obama administration, with the State Department and everybody, the DIA was a dissenter. They said, no, we think it's suspicious. We think it's risky. We don't want this sensor used. Not for any good reason, but just, suspicion. Fair enough. But everybody else agreed with it. So then in 2016, when all this stuff with General Stewart happened, they certified it again because it was the same sensor that they'd certified in 2013. It didn't change any. So it was still certified to be fully treaty compliant. And then again, in 2018, the Trump administration was forced to certify it yet again. and they couldn't find anything wrong with it either, because there isn't anything wrong with it.
Right. Right.
But each time there's a big, oh, the Russians and their digital sensor, oh, wacky. But these are the standard. It was built to standards that the Americans had participated in dozens, hundreds of meetings about since 2010. Like this, like even before 2010, they were working on this. Digital cameras aren't new,
No.
and they've been working on it for a long, long time. So it's taken us this long to come to a point where just a few cameras have been certified or are about to be certified. The German one any day now, I hope. And the Russian one, the same one that's been certified 3 times since 2013. And the American one that's been installed and will never be certified because they've pulled out of the treaty, but hopefully it'll be back in and then get it certified.
Right.
Yeah, it's weird. Yeah. I mean, I can understand the suspicion about it, but yeah. I mean, the digital cameras, no one's going to go back to film. You're not going to go back.
No.
Yeah,
And everybody agrees. The whole OSCE, everybody agrees. All 34 countries agree that they're going towards digital. Like it's universal. Everybody's agreed. There's standards. All the resolutions about it. It's all a done deal. The instead of the media portraying the reasons to leave the Open Skies Treaty that are being proposed by the Tom Cottons, Boltons, the Morrisons, and all that, they should be calling it the excuses. Because whatever the reason was when they came to power and with Trump, they were going to just pick whatever. It was sort of like musical chairs. Whatever was the violation of the day was going to be the reason to leave the Open Skies Treaty. The violations that the Americans allege don't match leaving a treaty. Like they're very, very minor.
So, do you have anything else, Eric?
No, man, that's all I got.
Anything you'd like to
I'm really done.
I'm all
mention
treated
before?
out, man.
Yeah. Anything?
Thank you guys for having me on.
Oh yeah, man, always.
Yeah,
I
it
love
was fun.
everything you do, man. I appreciate everything you've done for me too, because I know you've helped me out in the past with tracking ships and everything like that. If you guys are out there trying to track ships, track airplanes, Steffan Watkins is like he's the dude to go to for sure.
Happy to point you in the right direction at least.
Always.
Steffan Watkins. Let me pull up your Twitter so everyone can see it real quick.
Oh, there you go.
There you go.
Your Texas license.
Texas license. Yep.
Yeah, there's
right,
a picture.
the pinned
There's
one.
a picture I found of that twin prop.
What's funny?
Yeah, that twin prop airplane you were talking about.
Oh yeah.
The twin prop
Yeah.
Open Skies one.
And 30B.
Okay.
And it looks rickety, but it does do the Russian winters,
It
unlike
looks
the old
stupid
OC-135.
It looks like a bomber. It's got the big old glass front.
I would love to fly in that thing in the glass front. That would be wild.
Man. No way. No way.
You got a
Absolutely
big
not.
50 caliber gun.
Swing around like you're in Star Wars, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yep. That's what they
I'm
were.
pretty sure one of the I think the Russian military television channel had a guy in the nose of one of these. It's a transport plane, so he wasn't flying in an open skies plane. He was just in one of the other AN-30s, and it did look pretty cool. It looked pretty World War II, because it looked like an old B-17 or something nose.
Right. Yep. All right,
Was
man.
it the B-17 with the glass nose? I don't remember.
Yeah, I
Somebody's
think
gonna-
so.
somebody's gonna-
Yeah, a lot of
My
the
World War
bombers, the
II
old
stuff,
bombers
yeah.
had them.
And they even had the ball on the bottom
The
of the
ball
plane,
turrets.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah, the ball turret. And I heard, if I remember correctly, the guy couldn't get out of there. He could only get in and out when the plane was landed. So if the landing gear failed to deploy or something, you got crushed pretty much. Like, it was not a good job.
Not a good
Oh
day.
my god, man! I'm so glad I was
And
a
you had to
submariner.
be, I think there was a height requirement too, because you had to be crunched up inside of this thing. It's not very large. That little ball, you're in the bottom with your gun, pivoting around and trying to take out Japanese Zeros as they come at you.
Yeah, and everybody gives me shit for being a submariner, right? Oh, you're like talked to. Yeah, no. I had a great life actually. I had my own place and everything. It's nice.
But all right, man, let's wrap it up. Thanks for joining us. And are we going to be back next week?
Maybe, I don't know.
We have we rescheduled Bing
Yeah,
West.
we rescheduled Bing West. He's gonna be not next weekend, but the weekend after
That's
next.
the
So
weekend after
December
that.
19th, I think, is the day.
somewhere around there.
Yeah, December 19th at 5 p.m.
And we have somebody. Let's not mention them because we haven't confirmed yet. But
Yeah.
we might have somebody next week.
Yeah, and I'm talking to 4 or 5 other people. I've got a lot of people scheduled for us, and trying to talk to Saab and some other people. So it's gonna be. We got a lot of good interviews.